Thank you for hopping on today, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me and for providing the service.
Of course, brother. Of course. So let's hop in just so the people can know who you are. Can you tell us, and I actually don't know this as well. Can you tell the people a little bit about your story, bro? Like, how did you get into the life insurance space, brother?
Yeah, I've never had a job, man. I got licensed when I was 21 years old, right out of college, my senior year, and I've been in the industry ever since. Thankfully, I met some really good mentors along the way that can teach, a young buck that had never been in sales before a thing or two. And it's been almost 10 years now, 9 years and some change at this point. So here we are.
Got you, got you. All right. So did you always start in the like broker space? Were you captive originally? Like, I guess walk us through that, or was there ever like a transition? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I've always been independent. One of the more important things for me is because it's very hard to fit every single client in one particular company and one particular carrier, right? It's a lot easier to have options, right? It's better for your clients to have options as well. So I've always been independent.
Got you. Got you. Okay. And can you tell us about, I'm interested to know, how was your first 30 days? I always ask people, what was your first 30 days in the life insurance space like? Was it really hard? Did you like hop head in and just start crushing it? Like, were you banging your head against the wall with like age leads? Like, what was that experience like for you, brother?
Yeah, it was definitely aged leads, but you also have to remember that this was before COVID, so the industry standard, we weren't doing the virtual thing back then. So this was a lot of going to people's houses and maybe driving 2 hours one way to knock on their door to have them not answer the door when you can see them in the living room, right? So like it was
Right.
very different back then. So that the most majority of my time was spent driving. Like that was the hardest part, like the biggest hurdle of it. Made sales fairly quickly in the beginning, but I was also so broke as a senior in college that I think I made like I don't know $1,200 in my first month, and I thought I was the richest guy in the world, right? So it's like I was just happy to start seeing money coming in.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, bro, I didn't know you've been in the game for like that long of time, like refining your skills and whatnot. I guess this is a pivoted question, but I'm genuinely interested. Like outside of it going from in-person to virtual, because I was on that brink, like right when we switched from in-person, I did it for like a year and some change, and then it's been virtual, basically everything ever since then. But even before that, could you walk the people back? Like, how have you seen the industry change as a whole, not just leads? From when you started 9 years ago till like now.
Yeah, night and day difference. I mean, it also it allows the younger generation to be more active in the insurance space, in my opinion, for two reasons. One, as an advisor, as a younger person, they're more prone to work from home, right? To work virtually and to sell virtually. And then vice versa to that, as imagine as a, like a 30-year-old couple, for example, or maybe a 27 and 28-year-old couple who just got married and has a kid on the way, they are most likely more prone to buy insurance with somebody over Zoom or over the phone than they are to have somebody come into their house, right? That's our generation, Trey, right? It'd be a little bit odd to have somebody come to the house and sit at the kitchen table with them, right? So
Yeah.
it's definitely night and day. It's done wonders, in my opinion, for the insurance industry. It's thrived. Like we never had a recession when COVID happened. We went through a pandemic, and we took a step back for like a month or two during the pandemic, but then continued to skyrocket. Things are different though, and it is an industry where you do have to adapt to survive, and that's really what we did. I was super happy about it. Like not the COVID, right? But like that we switched to virtual. I was super happy just because I didn't have to drive as much. I was happy to work from home. And
Yeah.
so it was something that I did a cannonball in the deep end about.
So I'm interested to know when you were in the field, I'm presuming you weren't running IUL in-person leads. So walk us through that transition, brother. When did you get into doing IUL leads? Was that transition, was that hard for you going from, I'm assuming maybe a final expense or mortgage, or I guess if you could explain for an agent who may kind of feel like, yo, I'm trying to get into IULs, could you walk them through, your transition and your kind of experience, brother?
Yeah, so I grew up, started in the industry on mortgage protection direct mail leads.
Okay.
So these were flyers that they got in the mail, hand wrote, hey, I'm requesting a call, sent back in. And it might have been a week or two before they received a phone call because, we're waiting on the USPS mail to deliver us the lead back. And that it worked, right? And it still works to this day if you want to go that route. It's just slower and more expensive for client acquisition. I did that for like 5, 6 years or so.
Okay.
So long time. And then I had dabbled in digital leads for, different variations, whether it's mortgage protection, life insurance, final expense, IULs. I dabbled in that for a little while because I knew that direct mail was the cost per lead was increasing. And so my ROI was going down. Like I had looked year over year over year since when I started in the industry, and I was becoming less, although I was making more sales, I was becoming less profitable just because my ROI wasn't nearly as high as what it used to be. So I realized it was time to switch. And when it comes to switching to digital leads, when it comes to really any lead vendor, but especially with digital leads, you kind of have to turn a lot of stones to find the good ones, right? Because a lot of lead vendors out there are in business for themselves, and they really don't care if any sales are made out of their leads, right? They're just kind of selling to agents and making a profit on a one-time sale, and they don't really care what happens to that lead and what happens to the agent. So went through that period for a while as well and spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to find good leads again. But once I did transition and fully commit into the virtual digital leads side of the business, there was a little bit of a learning curve, but just like anything else, right? It's like the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I want to take that now a step further because when people come in and work with us, I'm always very, like, I'm in the same mindset you are in regards to, hey, man, we're going to try these out. Let's see what happens. And I think at that point, right, we use a dating analogy. It's just like going on your first date. Like, you are here to impress, right? I'm here to show you, hey, these leads are good. But the test of time is a relationship, right? Is you buying leads over and over again and being able to make sales. So I always notice like, okay, if somebody buys the first time to make some sales, I was like, okay, they buy a second time and they make sales. I'm like, all right. And then third and fourth, and then it shows me on my end, like, okay, we can start developing a relationship. This is a quality agent overall. But I want to know because I've seen you close a variety of different like not carriers with us and different policy types. Can you walk us through? We're going to kind of step into the sales process. And can you walk a new agent through? He's buying, for those that don't know, he's buying text verified IUL leads. Can you walk us through kind of like your philosophy or your process from a high level? You don't need to go into like the actual intro phone script. It's very simple. I want to focus on like the very small details that are making, Jamie successful. But can you explain for a newer agent that's now working with us kind of like how you look at these leads, what best practices are, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. So from a 30,000 foot level, a lead is somebody requesting you to call them. So you have to call them, right? And you have to call them multiple times because when you call them, they may not be available to answer the phone, or they may be like me and you, where if a random number calls me, I'm not going to answer the phone. So it's like I need somebody to call me multiple times to the point where I recognize the number, to the point where they leave a voicemail or they leave me a message on one of those, called scam verify call things, right? Where I'm like, hey, this is Jamie. I'm calling about that IUL request. I want to be able to see why they're calling before I even answer the phone. So in its simplest form, you have to call them multiple times. And so I double and triple dial. So call, no answer, call, no answer, call, no answer, right? And I'm going through that daily, like sometimes multiple times a day, but it's a fine line because I want to get them on the phone, but I also don't want them to block my number, right? So
Right, right.
it is a fine line. But typically, yeah, once a day. I prefer evenings. I find that the average person is working a 9 to 5, especially a lot of these folks and these that are interested in IULs or interested in building a cash reserve for retirement or building an income for retirement, don't have retirement set up with their current job. They're typically working 9 to 5. So typically I like to call them after 5 o'clock, 5:36 or so that the odds of them answering are higher, in my opinion. And sometimes you're going to get the folks like you and I that our hours vary, where they may be able to answer the phone in the mornings, right? But I call them multiple times a day, or excuse me, multiple times a week throughout the week, not multiple times a day, at different points of the day so that I can try and get them to answer the phone. And when I do get them to answer the phone, I need them to verify I need to give them a reason why I'm calling. It's so within the first like 10 seconds so that they don't hang up on me. Right. So I'm letting them know that, hey, I'm calling you about your IUL request to build cash value or to build in retirement income, right? Whatever they list on that form, I'm repeating verbatim back to them. And that's making them understand why I'm calling and know exactly who I am. And I'm also telling them I'm calling them about the request that you made, for more information on IULs for your retirement, right? So I'm putting the action back on them that you are the reason why I'm calling, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And I like the part of you using the information that's on the form. Quick question, I guess, for you. Obviously, we have tons of data points on that form. Do you use all of them at some point in the intro, or is there any that you don't use? I know it's like, when are you looking to get an IUL set up? Do you have any pre-existing health conditions? Do you use any of that like for pre-ammo, or are you just strictly typically like main goal, how much you want to contribute? Like, which of those fields have you seen work best in terms of like gaining that initial rapport?
Yeah, name obviously, right? So it's like, hey, that's how I start the calls. It's like, hey, is this Trey? Yes, this is Trey. Right? Hey, Trey, this is Jamie. I'm calling you about your request for IULs to build a cash reserve to access in case you need it. You remember making that request, or does that sound familiar? So name, financial goal, right, which is the reason that they filled out the form. And then as I get a little bit further in my script, so Trey, just to verify a couple of things here, I see that you're 27 located in Florida. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Right. So those are really the big ones is name, financial goal, state, and age. And then I'll get into, I don't really touch on the rest of the information. Of course, I do ask them about health conditions. And of course, I ask them about how much they want to contribute. But that's always in a later part of the conversation. I guess the best way to answer your question is that after I verify the information with them, I'll say, so, hey, Trey, I'm the advisor assigned to your request here. It's my job. Number one is to explain to you how these IULs work. Right. Number two is to answer any questions that you have about them. And then number three, if it makes sense, is to get you started on one. Is that fair? Right. And they always say yes. And that sets clear expectations throughout the call that if I'm going to explain it to them, answer their questions, and then get them started on an IUL on that very call.
Yeah, I always take notes of things because I'm always trying to figure out what questions we can add or remove, what's going to be best, what people are using. Because then when I get a consensus, like we add certain things in, but then we also can like take things out, which can like help sometimes. Because, as you can assume, some people see all the questions and are like, this is too much. Whereas for other people, it's necessary. So it's like this happy medium when it comes to qualifying a lead properly. So you don't just have like, garbage coming through the pipeline.
Yeah, I prefer the more data, the better for me. But I'm also a vet in the industry, right? So it's like I know when and how to use my ammo, right? When the one thing I will warn new people that are maybe that's their first time trying out IUL leads or anything is don't look at that monthly contribution column because it's very
Mm.
easy to judge leads, because if I get one lead that comes in that says, hey, I want to do $100 a month, and I get another lead that comes in, it's like, hey, I want to contribute $500 a month. Which one am I going to be more prone towards calling, right? But it's you really just have to kind of ignore that column in the beginning. And it's most important to get people on the phone because once you get them on the phone, you build rapport with them. You go in, as you're 15, 20, 30 minutes into your conversation, and then you talk about budget, right? And then let them decide, right? Because I know that they click the button on the form, but let them decide and be conservative with your numbers because there's been lots of times where somebody's said on the form, hey, I want to contribute $100 a month, and they end up doing like 250 or vice versa, right? It's like they want to contribute $500 a month and they end up doing like $300 a month or sometimes the opposite. And to that point, I always tell people to be conservative. It's a lot easier to increase down the road than it is to decrease. So if you're going back and forth, it's like, hey, I might be able to do $300, but I know for a fact I'm going to be able to do $200 a month. I'm always going to start them on $200 a month just for persistency reasons because I don't want that thing to charge back 3 months later.
Correct, correct. Smart, smart. And I appreciate you for sharing that because I think agents do need to understand that. Like at the end of the day, the job here is to keep money, not just to make money.
Yeah.
and we gotta keep it on the books, y'all. I have a question because I don't know this. Are you doing one call closes? Are you doing booked appointments? What's your process for when people do pick up? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing both. It's based off of their availability. So I put, if they have time to sit down and talk for 30 minutes to an hour as I'm dialing through my leads, then absolutely I'll do that. The odds of that are fairly low. It's maybe 20 or 30% of my sales are like that. So the majority end up being booked appointments. Not that that's my preference. It's just the way that, life is with getting people on the phone and their availability. But it doesn't hurt at all to book appointments because then, like we've talked about this before, Trey, is like I'm sending them marketing material
Yep.
as we go into the appointment. So like I'm sending them information to read. I'm sending them videos to watch, right? And the more information, if they watch in either one of those videos or read anything about IULs, then the closing ratio goes through the roof because they're well educated coming in to the appointment, right? And there's still can close if they don't read any of the pre-appointment material, right? But if they read that material, one, they're showing up, and two, they're buying a policy.
Right, 100%. For those that don't know offline, without sharing too much of your sauce, bro, can you explain to them conceptually what you were mentioning when you were saying that you send out the video? And can you also explain to them, I know, but for the layman's person, why is that increasing the closing rate, the show rate, etc.?
Yeah, these are all materials and videos that I found within the agent lead lab, agent side of things, the trainings, the videos, the modules, right? This is all information that I've gotten from Trey and the team. And it's just using your resources wisely, I guess is the best way to describe it is if they're all of the training that's available to you, that's one of the things that makes Trey and the team different is that there's not a lot of lead vendors out there that provide training around the leads, right? It's just they're just selling leads to you and it's kind of like, hey, good luck. There's tons of training that's revolved once you do enter the community and become a part of the team and join the group chat, right? So I simply took some of that material, some of those videos, some of those documents and put it a part of my SOP, right? My standard of procedure that every time I book an appointment with a client, they're getting blasted is not the right word, right? They're automatically getting a text and an email from me with this information. And it's all just information, marketing material about IULs, right? Like they're 8-minute videos, 5-minute videos, right? Little documents that take a minute to read. But the more information that they can read beforehand, the better because it's less selling on my part, right? It's like they can oftentimes when clients do read that material before my appointment, they're already sold and it doesn't matter who the agent on the other line is, right? It's like I'm just lucky to be that agent and write them the policy. They're looking to get one as soon as possible.
Right, right. No, I mean, and I think that's absolutely crucial for people to understand how powerful it is to actually have that pre-document information sent over to the client before, they end up meeting with them. Are you doing these appointments? By the way, this is always my favorite thing, and I ask it because it really shows how agents, communicate. Are you doing your appointments on Zoom or are you doing your booked appointments on the phone?
Yeah, everything's over the phone unless they ask for a Zoom. And I'm happy to hop on a Zoom with them if they want. It's just to me, it's simpler to do it over the phone. But if they do ask for a Zoom, then I'm more than happy to hop on a Zoom with them.
Yeah, so let me play devil's advocate because I get asked this question by, you can imagine the type of clients we have, some that are more, this way is the way you should structure it versus that. I'm not here to argue with people, but I'm an agent and I'm like, my question to you would be, well, Damien, I hear what you're saying, but how do you go through a presentation about an IU without, getting on Zoom and showing them the illustration? Can you I know the answer, but for the people that don't know, can you walk them through why you would do that and or like how you do it for that person that's wondering?
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling IULs correctly, you don't need an illustration to sell, right? It's like your job is not to sell an illustration. Your job is to sell a vehicle, and the vehicle being a tax-free retirement account, right? So that's really, I guess, the simplest way for me to answer that question is that I rarely ever send illustrations out because that's where I've gotten in trouble in the past. Not, this is where I've made mistakes in the past, is where I've sent illustrations out and the product doesn't perform, or the carrier changes the caps, in terms of what they can make every year, things like that. And it doesn't match up to that original illustration. So I rarely send illustrations out. I'm focused on selling the product. I'm focused on selling whatever reasoning. I mean, one of the first questions I ask on my appointments is like, Trey, I see the form that you filled out here, but tell me what's really caught your eye about these IULs. What's piqued your interest, right? And whatever they tell me is the selling point that I'm going to come back 3, 4, 5 times throughout the appointment. And if you do that, you don't need an illustration.
Right. And just so everybody understands what he's saying too, he's essentially saying that he's focused more on the concept and how the product can solve that problem
Yeah.
by pitching the concept rather than having to get these detailed numbers. Because at the end of the day, your job is to help them solve whatever problem. That's why he's asking that question on the front end. So it can actually help you on the back end when it comes time to closing, building value, actually assessing the importance of this product to whatever the problem is, right? I want you to touch base on like working with us here at Agent Lead Lab. We talked about the leads a little bit, but how has the experience been working with us? Obviously, the team, the leads. I'll kind of give you the floor to talk about it. And then I'm going to also follow up with like, I always ask, what are some things that you would like recommend we could improve or, tidbits for agents, like to not think that everything's like perfect. But we'll start with what's kind of your experience been thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to go back and look at the exact numbers, right? But I think that I've closed at least 20 or 25% of all the leads that I've gotten up to this point. I think I'm on lead order number 3 or 4 at this point, and I've consistently closed, 20 to 25% of per lead order, right? And that's very profitable when the average case size is $2,000 or $3,000. Right, on an annual basis. So sometimes more, sometimes less. But anyways, the cool part, as alluded to earlier, is that the average lead vendor is you're not talking to the CEO, you're not talking to the owner, you're talking to a sales guy. And the sales guy is simply there to sell you. And once you buy that lead from them, there's no communication except when do you want to buy your next order, right? Here, it's different. It's like when I joined, and I didn't even know this when I bought my first lead order with you guys, right? I wanted the leads more than anything else. But one, they're competitively priced, which is what originally intrigued me. Once we got in, there's tons of training, videos, scripts, pre-recorded trainings, pre-recorded videos, looms. There's an entire community where every day people are writing applications and posting what they did to win and how they made the sales and what kind of sales that they made. Everything's in a group chat setting. Everything's on Discord. There's group chats with myself, Trey, and the team. So when I have a personal issue going on with my lead order or whatever the case may be, I just send a message to the tech team and they get back to me, certainly within an hour, most of the time quicker than that. I had a busy weekend this weekend. I was playing golf on Saturday and Mother's Day on Sunday. So I sent a message to the team. I was like, hey, can we pause the leads over the weekend because I'm not going to be working at all? And can we restart them on Monday? And they said, yep, absolutely. We'll pause it Friday night and restart it Monday morning. So the communication is there. It's very rare in the industry to have that from a lead vendor. So
Yeah, 100%. Well, we appreciate that. And then on the other end, anything that you would improve, things maybe you would tell agents like, once again, maybe not bad, but just anything that you could share that like, hey, it's not all roses. This could be something you need to look for, whether it's like speed to lead or, the leads don't come in super fast all the time or whatever. Not every lead's perfect. I always just like to give agents the opportunity to know all the pros, but also if there are any cons or things that they can look out for so they can come into this with a very open mind.
yeah, well, just remember that the stats that I gave earlier, that means that 70 to 75% of the leads that I'm buying I'm not getting a hold of. I'm not answering the phones or book an appointment and they no-show me, right? So it is certainly the majority of the leads, but that's the industry, right? And if you're new to the industry, then that is an interesting thing to wrap your head around. But I can tell you that even though I'm closing 20 to 25% of the leads that come in, I'm still getting on average, I looked at it this morning, a 6 to 9x ROI on every lead order that I've bought so far, right? So do the math. If you spend $1,000, I'm making 6 to 9 thousand in commission on the back end. If I spend $2,000, then you can do the math on that as well, right? So even though I'm not necessarily hearing no, but not getting a hold of 70% of the leads that come in, I'm still getting a 6 to 8 times ROI. And that's why you really need to work with the leads that you do have coming in. You do constantly need to take massive action and constantly be dialing. I would also recommend to anybody to use a CRM because it's a lot of leads and it's a lot of appointments and it's a lot of
Yeah.
dials and it's a lot of notes and it can be very confusing very fast. So using a CRM, some form of Go High Level or whatever CRM that you want to use, where you're dripping on these leads. They're getting texts every day. They're getting emails every day. There's voicemails, right? Whatever the case may be, helps you tremendously because then the client's responding to you at their available time. So at that point, it's really easy to pick up the phone and call them when you see they're available and texting back and forth with your CRM.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we are gonna wrap up, but I have a question because I forgot to ask you. Do you text messages? That's what I meant to ask you. So you mentioned contacting them. Are you texting these leads immediately? Are you texting them? I know you said you call in the evenings. That's a question that I get asked all the time. And
Yeah.
like for me, I wasn't a texting guy. Like when I sold, and I know some agents are totally against it versus some agents, they die by it. What are you seeing? I'm sure you tried. Like, what's the best practice from the cell phone? Let the automated. What do you think? What do you think that's best for agents when it comes to contacting these leads through text?
Yeah, so I do call them right away. It is a speed to lead thing for me. And once again, I'll probably 20% of them do answer, right? Because they filled out the form and they're expecting a call immediately. So to me, speed to lead 100% will do that. Now, the other 80 to 90% that don't answer on that immediate phone call, I'm immediately throwing into my CRM where they're immediately getting a text and an email from me. Right. And once again, maybe 20% of them, 30% of them, whatever, will respond to the CRM. And that's excellent. Right. But once again, the remaining 60, 70% that don't answer that initial phone call and are not answering to my CRM is going back into dialing, right? It's like I need to get a hold of them over the phone. So absolutely, I am calling them immediately. I am throwing them into the CRM, but that's not the end all be all because the majority of my sales, 90% of them are coming from me picking up the phone. So
Gotcha. No, I like that. I like that. I like that. Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to leave the people with before we hop off, bro, about the company, about your experience? I mean, the floor is yours to kind of say anything maybe I didn't ask you that you think is important for people to know.
yeah, like I said, competitively priced is what originally caught my attention, and the support has been there. It's been just over a month, call it 5 or 6 weeks that I've been associated with Trey at this point, and I will continue to be here for quite a while. So it's I've been looking for an IUL lead vendor, or really just any lead vendor for since October. So 9 months now that I've just been kind of rotating through, and you're the first company that I've made a second purchase with, let alone a third and a fourth. So for what it's worth, as somebody who's been in the industry for 9 years and been looking for a lead vendor for 8 or 9 months now, take that for what it's worth. So.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, brother. We appreciate you. And for anybody that is interested or has questions, just reach directly out to us and we will contact JC if he wants to potentially, talk to you, maybe help you out, whatever the situation is, but we'll get that squared away. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a blessed day and I appreciate everybody for tuning in. See you guys next time.